Avanti West Coast is well known for operating intercity services in the UK from London to destinations in the north of England and Scotland with their Pendolino trains, alongside serving destinations in the north of Wales with their Voyager trains. However, since 2024, they have retired their Voyager trains with a fleet of 23 brand new Class 805 and 807 Evero trains. One of the main features that the longer Evero trains have that is shared with the Pendolinos is the inclusion of one standard premium carriage, given the comfort of first class without the hefty price tag. So today, we'll be taking two trips with Avanti West Coast, one with each train, to compare the two types of standard premium that Avanti West Coast offers. So, let's head to Manchester Piccadilly to start our journey. And here is our train, the 0955 Avanti West Coast service to London Euston. I'm all the way at the front. So this is a service that takes roughly 2 hours and 15 minutes to complete, and I'm excited to see Avanti West Coast standard premium offering and what the service has to offer. Obviously I'm not in first class, unfortunately. I wish I was, but it'd be interesting to see what the service and what you get on board is like. So yeah, I'll get a few photos and I'll hop on board into the standard premium carriage. So yeah, and here we are, Coach H. Now let's get on board. And here's our seat, number 24. It's one of two single seats. So yeah, let me see if I can get my luggage in these luggage rags first of all, and then I'll show you what the seat's like. Just about, it seems. So I am sat in seat H24 for today's journey. It is one of two solo seats in the entire carriage, which is mostly made up of banks of 4 or banks of 2. This one's the one with the good view, it seems, out of the two solo seats. There's one up there with no window. But yeah, what you get on this seat is as follows. So to start off, you have this huge wide desk. In fact, let me move my microphone so I can... There we go. So what you get is this huge wide desk, definitely enough so that you can put a laptop on it, which contains not just a 3-pin plug socket, but also 2 USB-A ports, which is pretty much the most amount of chargers that I've ever seen on a train, I think. You've got a coat hook up here. You've got a window blind, which for this seat is all to yourself, and each table of 2 and 4 have their own dedicated windows. So on these trains, in standard premium and first class, you don't actually have to ask people whether or not it's okay to close it. In terms of legroom, you can see down there, practically unlimited, with a nice footrest. And also, there's a recline. On top of that, each seat has its own reading lamp, although on this particular journey mine didn't work, so just imagine that this is working. And there are also large luggage racks just in case your bag is a bit too big for the overhead racks. Now that we've went over the seat, I think it's now a good time to show you our route down to London today. We start off by heading out of Manchester Piccadilly towards Crewe, stopping at Stockport and Wilmslow along the way, before joining the West Coast Main Line and stopping at Crewe and Stafford before running non-stop to London, with a journey time of 2 hours and 15 minutes to cover the 189 miles or 303 kilometre journey, giving us an approximate speed of 84 miles an hour or 135 kilometres per hour. Anyway, let's have the train depart, shall we? Not even 10 minutes into the journey and we are already pulling into our first intermediate stop of Stockport, which is served by every Avanti West Coast service in and out of Manchester, as well as many local and regional services across the north of England and the Midlands. The station itself was opened in 1843 and was originally called Edgeley until 1968. Although what is by far the most interesting fact about the town is its 34-metre high railway viaduct, which was built using more than 11 million bricks at the cost of £72,000 or £9.3 million in today's money. Around 8 minutes later, we are arriving into the second intermediate stop of Wilmslow, which is quite a popular intermediate station for these services. At this point, I've also started playing Pokemon Shining Pearl on my Switch to pass some time. After Wilmslow, I decided to check out the onboard shop on the train, which is located in Coach C, where I purchased a hot chocolate and a Millionaire's Crispy Bar for a total of £3.60 thanks to the £4 hot drink and cake deal, with a 10% discount added for all Club Avanti members. As you've just heard on the announcer, we've now arrived at Crewe, which begins the West Coast mainline portion of the journey. Crewe is a major rail interchange with numerous lines, allowing for connections to Scotland, Liverpool, Wales and the Midlands. In fact, it's this station and its great connections that put the town on the map, becoming one of the most prominent railway towns in the country. It's from this point where we start to properly pick up the speed, as Cheshire gives way to Staffordshire, which, if you're going off of regions, marks our crossing from the north into the Midlands, a major milestone for this part of the journey. Not too long later, and we're pulling into the final intermediate stop on our journey, which is Stafford. From this point onwards, our Class 390 travels the next 215 kilometres in a total time of 1 hour and 18 minutes, showing off the true potential of the train's tilting mechanisms, something which the Evero is unable to do. So now, it's just a speedy jaunt down through the English countryside, as the towns on the edge of the West Midlands, such as Tamworth and Nuneaton, come and go. And then we speed past the cars trundling down the M1 at Watford Gap, and even Milton Keynes is a blink and you miss it affair. It's not too long until we speed through Watford Junction, and we even manage to get a glimpse of Wembley Stadium on the busy lines into Euston Station, of which we arrive in on time after 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Sorry.
Right then, I have a few days in London now, before heading back up north to Blackpool on their Evero service. Now, not all of the Everos even have standard premium accommodation on board, as the services to North Wales are operated by 5-car Class 805s, which only offer standard and first class service on board. However, the Class 807s, which operate to the likes of the West Midlands, Liverpool, and occasionally Blackpool, have 2 extra coaches, one of which allows for the standard premium service. So, let's get on board, shall we? As you can see, the seating on the Everos have the same 2+1 seating arrangement seen on the Pendolinos. However, the most striking difference seen here is a different seat design. These seem to feel a bit more firm than their older counterparts. However, the shape and the padding that these seats do have still offer a pleasant experience, and I had no problems being sat on this train for a good while. There is a fixed armrest next to the window, which underneath has a 3-pin plug socket and a USB-A charging port. The seat recline is quite difficult to find, but is on the edge of the seat, giving quite a laughably small amount of recline. There is a big table in the bays of 2 and 4, which also have wireless charging available on them. Now let's see if it works.
You know what?
Other cool features on this train include seat numbers being written in Braille, and cool LED screens for the passenger information screens above the doors. And now, before we set off, let's take a look at our route now. The first portion of the route follows the exact same path we took on the way down, just in reverse, and go non-stop through Stafford into our first stop at Crewe. After this, we stop in Warrington, Wigan and Preston before going non-stop through the darkness into Blackpool North, giving a journey time of 2 hours and 57 minutes to cover a total distance of 364 kilometres. We waste no time getting up to speed out of London, and it feels like it's just been a few minutes before we speed through Watford and out towards the Midlands. All of the places that we passed on the way down are sped past on this train, as the scenery decides to get darker along the way. As the journey progresses, I decide to hop down to the shop in Coach C to get a hot chocolate and a packet of crisps. This costed me £3.95, and it would have been uneventful if the man operating the shop wasn't so reluctant to make the hot chocolate. I rarely, if ever, have negative experiences with staff, especially with Avanti West Coast, but it's certainly not the type of impression I want to get from such a competitive service. As the scenery is now practically non-existent as the sun sets, I thought I'd show you what the single seats look like on the Evero. They come with a flip-up table thanks to it being a priority seat, but it doesn't have a footrest unlike the ones on the Pendolino. On approach into Crewe, it's pitch black outside and we're held up at a red signal as a 45-minute freight train needs to be passed through the area. This brought our train to a complete stop for a little while, so we just have to do nothing for a little while before being let into Crewe. We arrive into Crewe a good 15 or so minutes late. It's not too bad though, as the West Coast is pretty quiet today, and there's plenty of pathing allowances that should give us plenty of opportunities for us to make this time up. But as for now, the train quietens and we trundle off once again, out into the darkness. At Warrington and Wigan, the train empties more, with just a handful of passengers continuing onwards to Preston and Blackpool. The train cleaner passed through a couple of times, and she spared some time to talk to me and my friend about working on the railway.
Oh yeah.
Well, we've just departed Preston. Next stop should be Blackpool North. We're the only people in standard premium currently. Bit of a reflection on the two journeys that I've taken in this video. The first one would be with the flagship train and the older train, the Pendolino, which in all honesty was a pretty good journey. Like the seats were comfortable, felt sort of more enclosed and sort of in your own little space, whereas on these trains, whilst the seats are very similar, it's a lot more of an open cabin, and it really depends on what you guys want from your travel experience. But personally, I prefer the more sort of enclosed space. As opposed to stuff like windows, these trains have much wider windows. It feels a lot more sort of open in that regard. Window blinds also pretty much the exact same. Table sizes, to my knowledge, are the exact same, although on the charging side of things, if you check under the armrest on these ones, you will find your charger, whereas on the other ones, it's, yeah. The seat recline on these do feel a fair bit less than on the Pendolinos. In fact, I think I said this earlier in the journey. You know, like, the first time that I actually ever travelled on one of these trains in sort of this offering, I didn't even think that there was any form of recline in the first place. It's just really difficult to find, and also not that much recline, but as a whole, the journey on both trains have been pretty comfortable. So now we've got like 10 minutes left on this train until it arrives into Blackpool North, and I'll end it off there when we get there. Right, here we are at Blackpool then. That was a lovely journey actually, to London and back with Avanti West Coast. 807002 is the unit that brought me down, and actually, even though it racked up 15 minutes of delay by Warrington, it actually arrived in Blackpool, I'm pretty sure, just like 1 or 2 minutes late. So the timeliness of it and the time that it's made up coming down here has actually been quite good, and I am impressed with that. So yeah, that was a great ride with Avanti West Coast. So yeah, if you did enjoy this review and want to see more stuff like it, including some really silly railway type things, then make sure to like and subscribe. So yeah, I'm vexspotting, and I'll see you in the next video. So yeah, goodbye.